Who takes a helicopter to a birthday lunch? The 54-year-old American president and his wife. To meet the 90-year-old British monarch and her husband and sometime chauffeur. Even they didn't seem sure of the etiquette of who gets to sit in the front. But once the niceties were done, the entourage sped from Windsor to Westminster. The pizzazz of the presidency, the power of the office, the megawatt political celebrity of the man himself. It couldn't be dimmed by the Downing Street rain. As Barack Obama arrived to add his pure force to the Prime Minister's biggest ever fight. Even before the President delivered his verdict, David Cameron looked like he could hardly believe his luck and his friendship.
I'm honoured to have Barack as a friend. He's taught me the rules of basketball. He's beaten me at table tennis.
We were actually partners in that ping pong game. And we lost to some school children.
Joke's over. Mr. Cameron's always said, if you're tempted to leave the EU, don't kid yourself. We'd be able to trade with the rest of the world.
I figured you might want to hear from the President of the United States what I think the United States is going to do. And on that matter, for example, I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-US trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue.
I'm very proud to have had the opportunity to be Prime Minister and to stand outside the White House, listening to this man, my friend Barack, say that the special relationship between our countries has never been stronger. But I've never felt constrained in any way in strengthening this relationship by the fact that we're in the European Union.
The American president warned of the risks of unstitching Europe's fabric.
Ultimately, this is something that the British voters have to decide for themselves. But as part of our special relationship, part of being friends is to be honest and to let you know what I think. And speaking honestly, the outcome of that decision is a matter of deep interest to the United States because it affects our prospects as well. In the 21st century, the nations that make their presence felt on the world stage aren't the nations that go it alone, but the nations that team up to aggregate their power and multiply their influence.
Are you also saying that our decades-old special relationship that's been through so much would be fundamentally damaged and changed by our exit? And do you have any sympathy with people who think this is none of your business?
We are so bound together that nothing's going to impact the emotional and cultural and intellectual affinities between our two countries. If one of our best friends is in an organization that enhances their influence and enhances their power and enhances their economy, then I want them to stay in it.
David Cameron's enemies in the European campaign branded Mr. Obama a hypocrite for intervening. Their biggest player, Boris Johnson, even questioned his motives. The American leader removed this bust of Winston Churchill from the Oval Office. Mr. Johnson wondered in print whether that was a symbol of the part Kenyan's president's ancestral dislike of the British Empire. That was met by the American president with a silky but deadly slapdown.
Prime Minister, to you, if I may, some of your colleagues believe it's utterly wrong that you have dragged our closest ally into the EU referendum campaign. Is it appropriate for the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, to have brought up President Obama's Kenyan ancestry in the context of this debate?
Questions for Boris are questions for Boris are questions for Boris. They're not questions for me.
I love Winston Churchill. Love the guy. Now, when I was elected as President of the United States, my predecessor had kept a Churchill bust in the Oval Office. There are only so many tables where you can put busts. Otherwise, it starts looking a little cluttered. And I thought it was appropriate, and I suspect most people here in the United Kingdom might agree, that as the first African-American president, it might be appropriate to have a bust of Dr. Martin Luther King in my office.
So what did the Out campaign's biggest character have to say in response?
The crucial thing that Winston Churchill stood for, and I think the crucial thing that America stands for, is representative democracy. And the problem with the EU is that nobody knows who's in charge, nobody knows who's making these decisions. And, you know, as I say, I think it's very, very weird that the United States should be telling us to do something they would not dream of doing in a million years themselves.
The Prime Minister and President Obama don't share the political intimacy of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, nor a common controversial cause like George W. Bush and Tony Blair. But by speaking so powerfully in favour of Britain staying in the EU, Barack Obama has done David Cameron much more than a favour. He's said that on the EU he's right and his rivals are wrong. Politics over, it was time for a private dinner at Kensington Palace. The Cambridges probably don't have to worry if the champagne's been put on ice. It's in number 10 that the corks might really pop tonight.